everyone, Thunder Thrills here! In today's video, I'm going over my favorite individual element at each park I've visited, going from A to Z. Sometimes a park just has one element that stands above any other in the park, while others are extremely hard to pick. At the end, I'm going to do a quick ranking of every element on this list to end things off. So with that being said, let's get into this video. Starting off this video is probably the most disappointing best element on this list. And that's because both Shellraiser and Sandy's Blasting Bronco were closed when I went, so I ended up having to pick between 3 family coasters. In the end, I decided on this weird Outer Bank thing on Nickelodeon Slime Streak since it was really enjoyable and better than I was expecting. I have not have a lot about to say about this element since it's so whatever compared to the other stuff on this list. So let's move on to the first actually good element on this list. Next up is a credit you probably don't have, and that is the Helix drop on Windstorm at America's Fun Park. These malls are pretty common, including one at Six Flags Over Texas and Runaway Mountain. But when I went to this park in June of 2018, this was definitely the best thing about the park and the best part of the ride. My memory is extremely foggy since it's been almost 7 years since I've ridden this, but from what I remember, it had some incredible laterals combined with positives and actually made my stomach drop quite a bit. This is where things begin to get serious. The next element is the first one I would actually consider elite. Desert Storm's loop at Castles and Coasters. This loop combines some of the best positives I've experienced with insanely unhinged laterals. You're getting crushed by positives while simultaneously getting thrown to the side of the train, and it's a one-of-a-kind element. It is definitely my favorite loop on any roller coaster I've ridden. I wasn't expecting the loops on this ride to be as forceful as they were. I walked into this ride expecting it to be a pretty standard looping coaster, and those loops hit with far more force than I ever expected. It was a very welcome surprise. Castles and Coasters is a really charming little park that definitely deserves its own little review in the future. Overall, the second loop on this ride is easily one of the most intense coaster moments I've ever experienced, with a combo of both bone-crushing positives and wild laterals making for a one-of-a-kind moment. Coming in strong is Dollywood, with the launch on Lightning Rod. Despite this not being my favorite coaster in the park, that moment of the ride was easily the best part and my favorite moment in the park. However, with that launch now gone, the spotlight shifts to Thunderhead. The best element currently operating in the park is the second speed hill on that ride. I personally think this is the best airtime moment on a GCI and is one of the few true ejector moments on any of GCI's coasters. This hill flings you out of your seat and doesn't hold back. It was definitely the standout moment on the ride for me. Unlike the Legend or the Boss, Thunderhead may not have the snappy laterals I love in my other top wooden coasters, but it makes up for it with sheer aggression. It's relentless in spots. And the airtime? Easily among the best I've ever experienced on a Woody. And honestly, I do think Lightning Rod's launch deserves a bit more attention even though it's gone. This launch was truly spectacular and one of the most powerful and punchiest launches I'd ever experienced on any roller coaster. I'd heard from people that it wasn't powerful or that it had a weak launch, but I didn't feel that way at all. Both of these moments are spectacular, and even though one is unfortunately gone, it'll always be remembered as a fantastic element by me, and I can't imagine Lightning Rod being the same without it. Here comes a wild one. The Outer Bank on Airy Force 1. This element is one of the best combinations of both strong ejector airtime and intense laterals in one single moment. This element is also when Airy Force 1 really begins to kick things into high gear and becomes a top tier roller coaster. The first half is good, but this element kicks things up to 11. Despite other elements on this ride being more aggressive and or stronger, this element combines 2 things I love the most, which makes it the best part of the entire ride. However, it is not the best RMC element that combines both laterals and airtime. That coaster is Wildcats Revenge at Hershey Park and its Twisted Double Down. I had an extremely difficult time deciding between this and the first drop on Skyrush, but in the end, I decided on the Double Down because of its aggressive laterals combined with ejector airtime. The reason I take this over the Outer Bank on Airy Force 1 is because on Airy, the laterals are pretty gradual and build up with the airtime. On the other hand, this Double Down is the only lateral moment on a modern steel roller coaster that holds up to the sharp laterals of CCI's roller coasters or Adventure Express. You get absolutely tossed to the side of the train while getting RMC style airtime, and it is just magnificent. I do think Skyrush is the better coaster, but Wildcat has the best element out of both rides, even if it is an extremely close call for me. Speaking of laterals, which are my favorite coaster force, the next element is my favorite moment of sustained laterals on any roller coaster out there. That, of course, is Legend's Double Helix. This element is special to me. After the Double Helix was removed from the Boss at Six Flags St. Louis, which was easily my favorite element in the park by a country mile. As a kid, I would lap Boss just to experience that Double Helix again. Then 3 years later, I got to experience an even stronger version of that at Holiday World. This element slams you to the side of your seat and keeps you there for well over 15 seconds, and I'm all for that. If you're sitting on the right side of the train and you're sitting next to someone, be prepared to apologize to them in advance, because you're about to crush them for the next nearly third of a minute. This element is my absolute favorite on any wooden coaster, and could definitely make a case for my favorite element of all time. It's incredibly lengthy, relentless, and built entirely around my favorite force, laterals. Legend is one of my all-time favorite roller coasters, and this Helix, it is a big reason why. While we're on the subject of wooden roller coasters, the next element is the most chaotic and whiplash-inducing opening I've ever experienced. The beginning sequence on Boardwalk Bullet at Kemah Boardwalk in Texas. From the second this thing leaves the pre-drop, it just goes absolutely berserk. The transitions are so rapid, the layout is so compact, and the pacing is so intense that you barely have any time to process what's happening. It feels like the track is about to snap in half while you're flying through it at full speed. You're getting slammed around and completely disoriented. When I went into this ride, I had huge expectations. Like, top 5 coaster level expectations. I'd heard how aggressive and wild the layout was, and from everything I'd seen, it looked exactly like my kind of ride. And for those first 15 seconds, it met every single one of those expectations. It was violent. It was relentless. It was everything I wanted and more. I legitimately thought I had a new top tier wooden roller coaster on my hands. But then, something happened. After the second drop, the pacing begins to shift. It doesn't fall apart or anything. It's still good, but the intensity drops off noticeably. The rest of the layout feels more like your standard Gravity Group coaster. Fun for sure, but nowhere near the level of that opening. So yeah, the beginning sequence is what makes the ride worth it. It's short, it's brutal, and leaves a massive first impression. If the rest of the coaster had kept that same energy, we'd be talking about an all-time top-tier wooden coaster. But even with the rest of the ride being considerably weaker, that opening is so wild and unhinged that it's easily my pick for the best moment on Boardwalk Bullet. Back to RMC airtime moments that combine both airtime and laterals into one. Can you tell I like laterals? And that is the Trick Track double up on Storm Chaser. I will say, this element is the strongest single moment of airtime I've ever experienced. It's not my favorite, it's not the most sustained, but it is the most powerful individual moment of airtime I've experienced. This moment is the definition of violent ejector airtime, and it honestly is kind of painful, but I like that sometimes. The first time I rode Storm Chaser, I was screaming my head off when I hit this element because of how brutally violent it was. The airtime on this ride is ridiculously powerful, and is definitely an upper tier RMC in my eyes. The airtime power on this ride was not expected, and it was a very pleasant surprise. I think this is comparatively the weakest of the 4 RMC lateral moments in this video. There is still one more to come, but it still is the best part of the ride. Oh, and shout out to that final turn. Those laterals are insane. Easily one of the strongest non-Adventure Express lateral moments out there. Speaking of which, the next element on this list is another contender for my all-time favorite, and it is the last turn on Adventure Express. This has a major caveat. It has to be at nighttime. This coaster goes from good during the day to absolutely unhinged during night hours. I will say that this is the single most violent singular coaster element I have ever experienced, and to come from an Aero Mine Train of all things was not expected at all, since a large majority of them are quite mild family coasters. However, this one is different, and all that climaxes with this unhinged final turn. That final turn is everything I love about this ride packed into one janky, chaotic finale. It slams you with 2 sharp lateral jolts, and then the second one throws this insane ejector kink that just sends you flying. Then right after you survive that chaos, you roll into the finale inside the temple. The animatronics are moving their arms and the drums are pounding. It's such a bizarre and perfect contrast. You go from this chaotic real-world slam to this theatrical over-the-top, "you have disturbed the forbidden temple" moment. It's like the ride knows exactly what it's doing, and it nails the vibe. I adore this ride. It's one of my all-time favorites and is dangerously close to cracking my top 5 overall. It's the most unexpectedly amazing coaster I've ever ridden, and if you want a full breakdown, check out my in-depth review in the card above. But yeah, this finale wraps up the whole ride perfectly. Speed, laterals, airtime, it's all here. Adventure Express is one of the greatest night rides of all time, and that last turn is the perfect chaotic cherry on top. Iron Shark is next up with its first drop. There isn't much to pick from this park since it only has one roller coaster and is a small boardwalk park, but this is still an extremely good element. Going into this ride, I was expecting a decent coaster at most, and pretty much a weaker and or shorter version of Daredevil Dive at Six Flags Over Georgia. However, unlike Daredevil Dive, this drop isn't trimmed on the way down, and that made it so much better. I found Iron Shark to be a much more intense and enjoyable ride than Daredevil Dive, and this first drop perfectly illustrates why. This ride just felt a lot more aggressive, and despite being shorter, packed a drastically bigger punch. This is the first time in this video I've picked a first drop as the park's best element, and it definitely won't be the last. Eurofighter drops are among the most forceful out there, and this one gives a violent pop of ejector on the way down. I wasn't expecting this ride to make my top 50 coasters overall, but it ended up landing at a solid 41 out of 137 ranked credits on my overall list. I really liked Iron Shark, and the first drop is a major reason why. Back to wooden roller coasters. Next up we have this weird turn on Texas Stingray. I don't know if this element even has a name, but it's so extremely wacky and full of weird laterals and airtime. The closest comparison I can make is that it's almost like if a traditional wooden coaster tried to have a wave turn. There's nothing else I've experienced quite like this element, and it's a very welcome surprise and helps make Texas Stingray feel unique and distinct from other GCI roller coasters. Compared to something like Thunderhead or Mystic Timbers, this coaster has legitimate laterals and is one of the reasons it's my favorite from this often repetitive but still great manufacturer. Now, this particular turn might be tough to explain, but I'll give it a shot. You go into it by starting with a pretty standard GCI turn, and then BAM! You are whipped to the side of the train. It's a sudden burst of laterals and airtime that catches you completely off guard. It's short but aggressive, and is one of my all-time favorite moments on any wooden roller coaster. The following airtime hill afterwards also gives great flagector air and is a perfect cap-off to this sequence. This coaster really deserves a full review. When I went to Texas, I was expecting Boardwalk Bullet to be my favorite Woody in the state, but Texas Stingray left Boardwalk Bullet in the dust, and it's not even close. It's a truly underrated and fantastic wooden roller coaster, and this element perfectly shows off why that is. Now for the most disorienting element in this video, and quite possibly any coaster I've ever ridden. The Zero G-Roll on Time Traveler. While Outlaw Run may be my favorite coaster in the park, I do think Time Traveler actually has several elements that outdo Outlaw Run's best elements, and this is my favorite of the bunch. You have absolutely no idea what is going on during this element. The cars are spinning, and it takes what otherwise would be a pretty average inversion into one of the single most head-spinning, most off-the-wall, and wildly unpredictable moments on any coaster, period. The fact that Time Traveler is slightly different every time adds so much to this for me. You can go into it sideways, head-on, backwards, or some variation of the three, and it makes this moment truly unpredictable every single time. There is nothing else on any other roller coaster that I can think of that even comes close to feeling like this particular moment, and I am all for that. It only makes me want to get on Ride to Happiness at Plopsaland even more, as I think that has strong potential to be the best roller coaster in the world. Time Traveler truly has some of the most standout moments on any coaster, and this is the wildest one of them all. Time for the last, but certainly not the least, of the lateral airtime moments on RMCs in this video. The transition to the brake run on Iron Rattler. This may not have the airtime strength of Ares Outer Bank or Storm Chaser's Trick Track Double Up, though in the grand scheme of coaster elements, it's still on the very high end of airtime. But excluding Wildcat's Double Down, this has the best laterals out of that batch of elements. I had heard nothing about this element going into Iron Rattler. Everyone always talked about the first drop or quarry dive, but never this. The first run I got in Iron Rattler, this was a total curveball. Coming right at the end, the surprise airtime hit even harder, and that also elevates it. You've just finished the quarry dive and you emerge from the tunnel, and you are absolutely slammed with powerful laterals and strong ejector airtime just before hitting the brake run. It's one of my absolute favorite RMC finales, from the quarry dive to the tunnel to this very final element, and it's the perfect way to cap off this incredible roller coaster. Now we're on to the final 5 parks in this video, all of which are Six Flags parks. Here we have what is probably the best moment at any Six Flags park I've visited. Raging Bull's first drop is legendary, and for good reason. It's one of the most unexpectedly violent and insane elements on a B&M coaster of all time, and is easily in my top 5 first drops. And it's all because of that pre-drop. It builds so much momentum that when your row finally hits the drop, you get violently ejected like a cannonball and go flying. That insane launch was my absolute favorite first drop for over 5 years until I rode Skyrush in March of 2024. Raging Bull was the first coaster that really showed me how crazy these things could be. And I remember the first time I rode this in 2015 before I was even a coaster enthusiast, being completely mesmerized by everything it did. It may not be my number 1 coaster anymore. Hell, it doesn't even crack my top 10 these days. But on a personal level, it's still firmly in my top 3. It's an iconic moment that proves B&M can throw some serious punches when they want to. For the final first drop of this video, we are ending off on X2. The build up to this drop is scary. You're facing backwards from the track, you don't quite know how high you are up the lift hill until you begin cresting, and then once you feel that angle changing, that pit in your stomach grows even more. Then you slowly begin flipping down that pre-drop and you get hit with one of the largest punches of any coaster element. You start staring straight down and see the ground directly below you for the first half of that drop. Then at the halfway point, the train throws you into a backflip. It's one of the most unhinged, totally out of control moments on any coaster I've ever ridden. This drop might be the single scariest coaster element I've ever experienced, and I am all for it. The build-up, and then the pure insanity of the element itself makes for a completely unique and wild experience compared to any other coaster I've ridden. Now we are on to the last 3 parks, all of which coincidentally are the first 3 Six Flags parks to open, starting with Goliath. Similar to Raging Bull's first drop, this element is very out of character for a B&M Hypercoaster, but in a completely different way. While Raging Bull's first drop has unexpectedly violent ejector airtime for a B&M Hyper, this has unexpectedly strong positives for a B&M Hyper. You go into this element with airtime, and then you are just absolutely slammed with positives for the next 8 seconds. It is absolutely one of my favorite moments for positives. You feel like you're getting crushed by the train, and it's definitely the most intense element on a B&M Hypercoaster that I've ridden. Now, speaking of elements that absolutely crush you, next up is Titan's Double Helix at Six Flags Over Texas. Take everything I said about Goliath's Helix and crank it up about 50 notches. This is one of the only elements I've ever grayed out on. I couldn't see anything for the majority of the element until we slammed into the mid-course. It's that intense. It's my second favorite element for positives of all time and is easily the most purely sustained I've ridden. The sheer length of this Helix is absurd. It genuinely feels endless, and right when you think it's going to let up, you take that hard slam to the mid-course brake run, and then you finally get a breather. I actually like that the mid-course stops you here. It gives you a moment to breathe, and if the ride keeps going at full speed, it might get too intense. Titan gets way more hate than it deserves, and this Helix is proof it's not just a mediocre hyper. It's a force to be reckoned with. Capping off this video, we have my home park, Six Flags St. Louis. Ending off this list of parks, we have the spike on Mr. Freeze. Given that this is my most visited park by a landslide, I had a few picks, but I'm going with what I find to be the most consistently great element in the park. There are elements like Screaming Eagle's drop off the second turnaround or the mid-course drop on Boss that are better than this depending on how they're running, but those are only great periodically. Another element that would have been a contender for this is the former Double Helix on Boss. However, that's been gone since 2018, and it's been almost 8 years since I've experienced it, so it's hard for me to properly judge that one. The spike on Mr. Freeze is, in my opinion, the best element in the park most of the time. The flowing sensation going up it while getting boosted is unlike any other coaster, and then getting launched down and getting that insanely quick jolt of positives during the pullout. Ever since becoming an enthusiast, I've never had a bad or mediocre experience on this element, while my other favorite elements at this park are either gone or aren't consistently good enough for me to justify me putting them over this one. While other standout moments might be hit or miss or lost to time, the Mr. Freeze spike is always a win. Overall, this is a great element to end off the list on. Now let's get into a ranking of everything we just discussed. Number 19, Outer Bank on Slime Streak. Like I said, this is the worst best element on this list. It's fun, but nothing special. Number 18, Windstorm Helix Drop. A good step up from Slime Streak's Outer Bank thing, but still nothing elite. 17, Iron Shark's first drop. Great first drop and a great start to this short but punchy Eurofighter. It's strong, but not as good as the rest. Mr. Freeze Spike. Just covered this. Cool moment, but not too much to add. Number 15, Goliath's Helix. Really enjoyable sustained positives and very different for a B&M Hypercoaster. Number 14, Desert Storm's second loop. Desert Storm isn't that special of a ride, but the loops on this ride, especially the second one, are a lot of fun. Lightning Rod's launch at number 13. Extremely underrated launch that packed a lot of power. Much more powerful than people gave it credit for. If you're wondering where Thunderhead Speed Hill would go, I would put it below Lightning Rod's launch but above Desert Storm's loop. Number 12, Texas Stingray's Weird Turn. Extremely wacky and unique element. Love this thing. Number 11, Zero G-Roll on Time Traveler. Most disorienting element on any roller coaster I've ever ridden, and slightly different every ride. Number 10, Storm Chaser Trick Track Double Up. Most powerful element based on raw airtime strength of all time, but not sustained enough to place higher. Number 9, the Iron Rattler Brake Run Transition. Incredible finale to an underrated RMC with plenty of laterals and great airtime to boot. Number 8, X2's first drop. Scariest element on this list. This element is terrifying from the build-up to the flipping itself. Number 7, Titan's Helix. Best moment for positives on this list. Super sustained and one of the few elements I've ever grayed out on. Number 6, Raging Bull's first drop. Best first drop on this list. Gives extremely strong airtime and was my favorite for years. Number 5, Boardwalk Bullet beginning sequence. Probably the greatest opening sequence to any roller coaster ever. If only the rest of the ride was this good. Number 4, Airy Outer Bank. Incredible laterals paired with back-breaking ejector airtime. What more is there to love? Number 3, Wildcat's Revenge's Double Down. Strongest moment of laterals on a modern seal coaster. Rips you over to the other side of the train while getting strong RMC ejector. Number 2, The Last Turn on Adventure Express. Strongest moment of laterals I've ever experienced. This element is the most violent moment on any coaster I've ever ridden, and I love it. However, it isn't sustained enough to be my favorite element of all time. Number 1, Legends Helix. My favorite element on any coaster. It's so long and so extremely sustained, it makes Legend one of my all-time favorite roller coasters. Hopefully I will make a full review on the Legend soon. That does it for my favorite element at each park I've been to. I enjoy just about everything on this list. There isn't a bad pick here. Be sure to drop a like and subscribe for more high energy coaster content. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.